Hello everybody, the Nameless Narcissist here once again, a simple man diagnosed with NPD, talking to you about narcissistic personality disorder and the stuff that goes on in my head. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, but keep in mind I am no clinician, so I can only speak to my own experiences. Yeah. Anyways, so basically I got a comment recently that was like, oh, can you do a deep dive on some of the terms that are commonly associated with narcissism and how these behaviors might manifest for me, right? Like, hoovering, discard, whatever. I have a couple of videos that I go into some of these individually, but I looked up just this list of terms that are commonly involved in the narcissistic abuse communities and stuff like that. And I think I'm going to do a quick rundown of these and tell you if I disagree with them, agree with them, how I'm thinking when I go through it, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so the first one is adult children narcissist. I've never seen ACON as that before. Whatever. Cluster B personality disorders, they basically outright that right. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? Narcissistic personality disorder is in the cluster B of personality disorders. That includes antisocial, histrionic, narcissistic, and borderline. Cognitive dissonance, which this isn't a term limited to NPD, so I'm kind of confused why they put this here, but whatever. They said the narcissist externalized manufactured identity is built on lies and denial, and he/she expects family members to accept his or her version of the truth. So I do want to point out that the manufactured and externalized identity, a very true thing, right? I rely on other people for self-definition, for my self-esteem regulation. They kind of got cognitive dissonance wrong, though. Cognitive dissonance is when you have two seemingly contradictory ideas in your head about what the truth is, right? Like me fearing abandonment, but then also thinking that certain behaviors that I'll do will prevent abandonment, but that actually perpetuate that abandonment. Kind of like that. Maybe that wasn't a good example. I think most people watching this probably know what cognitive dissonance actually means. CPTSD, obviously, if you're in an abusive relationship, that can progress into the point of CPTSD. This person said a common condition in narcissistic abuse victims, which I am highly doubtful that is common. I am sure that there are abusive people who have narcissistic pathology that on the extreme end of things can lead into CPTSD, but that is not common. That is not a common diagnosis whatsoever. And even in some of the worst abusive relationships, you might not develop CPTSD. Devaluation. Because they're emotionally primitive or perfect or worthless thinking, I hate them calling it emotionally primitive. That feels so that feels almost dehumanizing, right? In my mind. Like, I agree to a certain extent, right? It almost is a childlike mindset, but that's not, like, we didn't choose to have a primitive emotional landscape, right? We need to go into therapy to fix that. Anyways, stuck at the developmental level of a young child, and their insistence on the unattainable perfection narcissist in relationships are nearly inevitably become disillusioned. And because they lack a moral compass, okay, that's not fucking... Okay, there's a separation between corrupted moral values and corrupted pathology. I do not think that those are even... I think that they have similar causes, right? You can get a fucked up moral system and fucked up psychology from an abusive childhood, but they are not intrinsically linked whatsoever. I know some very moral narcissists, I know some very moral borderlines, and some very immoral of both those. And also, that's kind of black and white thinking to assert that there is a universal moral compass, right? Again, like the stunted children they are. Yeah, thanks. We should get therapy instead of you guys just insulting me. Sorry, I hate like how these articles are so just not professional, right? Even some of the best articles out there have this verbiage that make it sound like it's our fault for having pathology. And yes, that doesn't excuse the harm that we've done. But just to insult us like this and not to encourage, people like me to get treatment when they're trying to learn about this shit. And and some people may be like, oh, well, it's not for a narcissist. It's just for their victims. It's like, well, there isn't resources out there for narcissists. My channel is the only one basically for narcissists. Me and a handful of others like Spirit Narc, Cluster B Milkshake, Heal MPD. Those are the only, and Early Warning Barking. Those are the only channels I'm aware of. And Google on the internet, you will not find a single article for, and that's actually a huge issue in our community, is some of us that wanting to get better, we can't find any resources on it because everybody's too busy feeding into what is now a business model regarding narcissistic behaviors. Not to say that anybody who has been through a toxic relationship with a narcissist is not valid, But to say that this issue has been just blown way out of proportion by a lot of these people. So yes, we can be toxic. Yes, we can have relationships that are abusive, but we are also, curable. We also have a very serious mental condition. Anyways, but devaluation, how I experience that though, is I've mentioned this a lot of times, how in a relationship, like I go into it thinking that they're perfect. I think that this is my soulmate, finally, after all these years. And, for young people, yeah, that's a thing that happens. But how I manage that is a lot different. It leads to a lacking in a lot of boundaries. And eventually, little things will start to happen that don't line up with what my image of the perfect person will be. Like a big thing for me is I need this person to basically be constantly stimulating, intellectually speaking. Like we need to be constantly having deep conversations, right? And if they show a lack of interest in something I find super interesting, I'm like, oh wait, maybe they aren't as intellectually inclined as me. And those anxieties start kind of build up until I'm basically constantly questioning myself. What if this isn't my soulmate? What if this is what if this person isn't good enough for me? What if my perfect person is still out there? And again, you can obviously see the haughtiness and grandiosity in that, but it's a distressing feeling. It's like this anxiety about it. Divide and conquer, which again, that was kind of weird to see because it's I've never seen this used in reference to narcissistic abuse communities. I could just be wrong though. I'm not super frequent on areas like that. Occasionally I check them out just because I'm curious. I feel like I need to educate myself in those portions of this too, but whatever. Primary strategy, narcissists use to exert control, particularly within their family, create divisions among individuals. This weakens and isolates family members, makes it easier for narcissists to manipulate and dominate. This is one of the things where it's yes, the behavior externally does look like that, but it's not. You have to remember that there's a lot of factors in that, right? Occasionally, I would try to drive people against themselves for the means of making sure that people wouldn't leave me, basically, right? That making them trust me more and rely on me more. Is a bad way to go about it, but whatever. But you have to also keep in mind that there's splitting in NPD. I might split on somebody and say something that I don't really mean about them to whoever I'm talking to, and that can kind of be, or say something that I really shouldn't about them, or that they said about the other person, and I might be completely fine afterwards. But that could very well be taken I'm intentionally manipulating people when there's a lot of times I won't. And we are never we're never trying to, because it's phrased in a way, it's yes, I can be manipulative and domineering. Those aren't the ends though. That's not the purpose of doing those things, right? And a lot of times that is unintentional. I know that I make people feel dominated a lot of the times without even meaning to. But it's not just that I want to manipulate. It's not that I want to dominate. It's that sometimes I feel like I have to either protect myself or get my needs met. Not anymore, but when I was unaware. So flying monkeys, I'm kind of skipping some of these that I just have never seen before because I'm these aren't common terms, whatever. Flying monkeys, I don't think I have to explain that one. But basically, so yeah, flying monkeys, basically, I hate the term because it's dehumanizing to the people that the narcissist might be manipulating, or unintentionally or not, or just people in general. That's very dehumanizing. Countess Karen made a very good point of oh, the flying monkeys were basically a part of the, if you go into the Wizard of Oz, the big bad, wizard guy, he's actually a little frail man once he was actually revealed, and that was a pretty good metaphor for narcissism, and I do agree with that. But yeah, flying monkey is basically just my little henchman who I use to keep tabs on people, my in group, so to speak, that I make a lot of promises to. I genuinely believe the promises I make, right? It's oh my God, I'm gonna get you everything, anything you ever want, just stick with me, blah, blah, blah. Very grandiose. I usually include them in my grandiosity. I'm we are the best ever. We have the best friendship, best relationship. Gaslighting, a form of psychological abuse which narcissists systematically undermine other people's mental state by leading them to question their perceptions of reality. This one I do have a lot of issues with. Gaslighting needs a significant rebranding because it has mainly, because this is a very specific thing, right? It's intentionally making somebody feel that they are insane, right? And with narcissists, that's not how it is. We're just fucking insane. And we can have some behaviors that lead to it looking like we might be trying to make somebody feel crazy, right? One thing I heard was oh, why would a narcissist interrupt my sleep? And I'm this is a trauma disorder. We genuinely wake up in our sleep. We genuinely like move around in our sleep and have problems with sleep. My ex, she would point out that she would ask me if I was trying to like wake her up in the night. I was like, what are you talking about? I was fucking asleep. And I'm sure nowadays she might look back on that and be like, oh, that's gaslighting. No, I was literally asleep. Like literally, and I can see how it would be bizarre because I remember she told me about how once she tried to get up to use the bathroom and like in my sleep, I like grabbed onto her. That's some like Freudian fear of abandonment shit, right? And like, but I was literally asleep. I have no recollection of doing that. Maybe you guys won't believe me but because, you know, I'm a lying narcissist, but like I have no reason to lie here. It's really weird. Gray rocking. Okay, so I'm pretty sure gray rocking is like this, just be super boring to the narcissist so he moves on. I mean, if you do that, expect a blowout is the issue. Unless you haven't known them for very long. But like if you go from texting like every day, like decent texts, right, to only sending stillborn texts, being like, yes, okay, whatever, I will notice that and I'll think you're doing it intentionally. I think you're trying to avoid me and I will blow up on you. I will think, why the fuck are you doing that? Like, I didn't do anything wrong to you. Why do you think that like why are you trying to get rid of me? Why are you trying to ignore me? Like gray rocking is not good advice. Like I'll only get bored if like you meant nothing maybe to begin with. If it was a relationship. Hoovering. Since narcissists are by nature pathologically self-centered and often stunningly cruel, often, they ultimately make them around them unhappy, if not miserable, and eventually drive many people away. If people pull away or try to go with no contact, narcissists may attempt to hoover, as in vacuum suck, them back into their realm of control. They try to hover through a variety of means, promising to reform their behavior, to acting unusually solicitous, to dangling carrots, to gift and money. However they find replaces sources of supply, they may simply walk away from old ones. This implies that like we promise stuff like reforming behavior as a means for manipulation. It is not. It is not at all. We genuinely believe that we can change and that we're genuinely trying. And a lot of times we genuinely try to, right? That's why you see a lot of narcissists go into therapy. Not only to show them that you are, but like also we do try to put in the work. We just very often slip back into the disorder. For me, when I hoover somebody, it's because I genuinely miss them. I think that, oh my God, like what did I do? Like in this, could be with friends, relationships, doesn't matter. What I would always do and how I, even nowadays, I still kind of do it, is like I would text somebody who I'm kind of estranged from, and my goal would be to kind of prod, like say things kind of like implying that I might miss them, right? So I still have plausible deniability because the shame of just saying I miss you is too much, in hopes that they'll say it first, and then I can be like, oh my God, I miss you too. Because like once that line is drawn, that's when I can be vulnerable-ish. Not super vulnerable, whatever. Idealization, same as devaluation, right? When I first see somebody, I think they're the best thing in the world. I think they're perfect. I think they're the greatest thing ever. It's the black and white thinking that's common with all cluster B disorders. We either think that you're perfect or you're nothing. It's a little bit different for borderline, but for me, it's like you're either on top of the hierarchy or at the bottom. They're making a lot of stuff for children, about children, and I can't really speak on that. Like lost child, golden child, that stuff. I've never had kids, so I can't really say much on it. Narcissistic injury. Individuals with narcissistic personalities will typically suffer invalidating emotional injury during their early years that interferes with healthy development of stable identity, sense of self-esteem, and emotional empathy. Yes, we are abused and we end up like this. Conditional caregiving because of loss, rejection, abuse, neglect, or overindulgence. And a possible genetic predisposition is thought to be at the root of all narcissistic injury. Wait, are they saying that like leading to a foundational feeling of worthlessness? So I don't know, this was weird. So are they referring to narcissistic injury as, because that's not usually how I hear it phrased. Usually it's like, oh, if you insult me, you remind me of everything that I hate about myself and everything bad I've ever thought about myself, I feel in that moment. And that might lead to me having an outburst or me shutting down and isolating or like whatever. And hence why we can be very hypersensitive to criticism, is because this whole facade is to protect ourselves from that inner emptiness, from that self-hate. And somebody insulting us reminds us that like it is just a facade. We are just empty. So I don't know why it sounded like they were referring to the narcissistic injury as like what caused the disorder, I guess. That's weird. Narcissistic personality disorder. Yeah, you know what that is. Narcissistic rage. Ooh. Narcissistic personalities often react with rage when their underlying feelings of vulnerability and shame are triggered. Yes. They tend to take even small slights, which most people would usually brush off as intensely humiliating. True. When this happens, their fabricated or perfect self and overblown feelings of entitlement are threatened. Overblown feelings of entitlement are threatened. They made it sound like entitlement was way more of a core of this disorder than it actually is. It's weird. Start off a wild rage response. It's terrifying, sometimes physically violent, and far beyond normal anger. It's emotionally and physically traumatizing for those on the receiving end, particularly children who are naturally blame themselves for adults' reactions. So, narcissistic rage. I don't really like the term. It's very weird. But yes, I have very strong anger reactions when I start to feel shame. Even nowadays, I still try to cover up that shame with anger. It's I call it the last layer of the mask. When all the other defenses are failing, anger is the last one, and that one usually will get the job done more or less in protecting me from shame. Also, keep in mind that alexithymia has a lot to do with this too. We don't know what our emotions are. And a lot of times this will lead to us just getting angry to cover those up because they're confusing and distressing, or just thinking it's anger. So narcissistic supply, which I prefer self-esteem juice, by the way, it's because narcissistic supply sounds dehumanizing for everybody involved. People with narcissistic personalities will depend emotionally on others to sustain their sense of identity and regulate their self-esteem. They get their narcissistic supply either by idealizing and emulating others or by devaluing and asserting their superiority. Anyone that can manipulate a partner, child, friend, or colleague is a potential source of supplies. That supply or narcissists are empty husks. I mean, that's true. If a source of supply pulls away, they may attempt to hoover them back or look for other sources. I really don't like the term narcissistic supply, and I hate when people call people supply, right? That feels just invalidating to literally everybody in that situation. But yes, I rely on other people for self-esteem regulation. I need people so I feel real. I need them to define me. I need them to tell me that I am great so I don't have to face the inner emptiness and the shame that I'm constantly battling against. So most of that was accurate. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be through manipulation to get that, right? I can just do nice things for people in that supply. I can achieve things in that supply. I can just have a conversation with somebody. Literally, me smiling to somebody on the street gets me self-esteem juice. It doesn't have to be through manipulation. No contact, yeah, obviously you guys know what that is, and I don't really have much to say on it. Yeah, do that if somebody's abusing you. Object constancy, yeah, we don't have a stable sense of object constancy. You are whatever you are in the moment to people like me. I am whatever I am in the moment to people like me. So one bad thing happens, and that's what you are in the moment, right? And when you're not around and reminding me of what you are and who you are and stuff like that, I can't connect emotionally as well to past events. I can't connect, I can't make a cohesive picture of people in my mind. It's I'm trying to think of a good metaphor. It's like snapshots, of people. And I can see one at a time, more or less. And I'm worried at all times that people will, if I'm not talking to somebody for long enough, I'm worried that they'll forget who I am, that they'll start to hate me, that their opinions on me have completely changed because I can't see that full line of events that made up my relationship with this person. To me, it's just whatever's there. And I'm okay, if they haven't seen me for a while, they'll either forget me or hate me. It's weird. Parentification. This role is where a parent inappropriately looks to a child, usually the oldest or most capable, to take on parental roles and responsibilities in the family. Yeah, that happened to me a lot. I'm not sure if that would happen to a narcissist. I would have to think about that. I've only seen borderlines do that because they have those just the boundary setting. I just see emotional distance in narcissists most of the time. Then projection. So simply put, projection is attributing one's feelings, reactions, or traits on somebody else. Projection often is just, we assume that you think like us. We assume that everybody thinks like us. So we'll assume that you're going to do the same things that we do because we think that our heads are basically the same. And that's more or less a rational reaction if you think about it, right? Everybody thinks that other people think like them, but it's our responsibility to realize otherwise. And then smear campaign, which is, just shit talking. That's just shit talking. That's actually one of my big issues with a lot of these terms, is that these aren't terms that a lot of times that we need specific terms for, right? Some of these behaviors aren't at all unique to narcissism. And with smear campaign, just shit talking. Hoovering is reaching out to an ex. Gaslighting is an independent term, but it's misused all the time. Discarding is a breakup. I would say over half of those terms aren't necessary. I do agree that there's some of them that do have unique behaviors to them that does warrant its own word. But I would say most of the time it's just dramatizing relatively normal actions and not focusing on the pathology itself, but these external, like, not even external behavior, just like things that happen that were distressing, regardless if it was about the disorder or not. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that shit. See you guys later.